The waitress saved an elderly man in the blizzard. Without knowing, he would choose her as his billionaire son's wife. Before starting the story, leave in the comments which city you're watching from. And at the end, don't forget to rate this story from 0 to 10. Good story to everyone. The snow was falling as if the sky had decided to fire all the clouds at once, and they were protesting in the form of a blizzard. Grace Turner looked through the window of the Blue Ridge Diner and sighed. Perfect. Just perfect. She was alone. The last customer had left 40 minutes ago. The clock on the wall, the same one she had already threatened to sue for making overtime feel like an eternity, showed 11:15 at night. Grace wiped the counter for the third time, not because it needed it, but because that's what responsible people did before leaving. At least that's what she told herself. "Okay, Grace," she mumbled, organizing the salt shakers like little tin soldiers. "You're going to leave, face this glorious storm, get home, take a hot shower, and pretend your life isn't a reality show without an audience." She looked at the coffee machine. "And you," she pointed her finger, "don't look at me like that. I know you're judging. You always judge." The machine obviously didn't respond. "Great. Now even the appliances are ignoring me." Grace grabbed her coat, a coat that had seen better days, like in another decade, and walked to the back door. She checked her purse. Wallet, phone, emotional emergency gum. All set. That's when she heard it. A strange noise coming from the front door. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't a branch. It was something between a moan and a cry for help that forgot the words halfway through. Grace froze. No, no, no. She looked at the ceiling. I didn't watch 3 seasons of that crime investigation show to end up like this in a diner at 11 at night. This is not happening. The noise came again. Grace grabbed the only weapon available, a frying pan that was drying on the rack. "If it's a robber," she whispered, walking slowly, "I swear the only valuable thing here is my dignity, and that left a long time ago." She reached the front door, took a deep breath, opened a crack, and her heart stopped. There, on the welcome mat that said, "Welcome to Blue Ridge Diner, smiles free, tips not," was an elderly gentleman. White hair stuck to his forehead from the snow. Soaked coat. Shaking so much he looked like he was auditioning for a movie about hypothermia. The frying pan hit the floor with a crash. My God! Grace pulled the man inside with a strength she didn't know she had. He was heavier than he looked, or maybe she was weaker than she thought. Probably the second option. Sir, are you okay?" "Of course you're not okay. Look at you." "What an obvious question, Grace." She dragged him to the nearest chair. The man could barely keep his eyes open. His lips were slightly blue. His hands were shaking uncontrollably. Grace felt panic rising up her spine. Okay. She ran to the heater in the corner of the dining room. "Heater, listen here. I know we have our differences. I know you decided to go on strike last week when I needed you most. But today, you're going to work. Got it? Don't embarrass me now." She turned on the device. Nothing. "You've got to be kidding me." Grace hit the side of the heater. Once, twice. On the third time, it rumbled and started blowing hot air. "Yes, that's it. Teamwork. That's all I was asking for." She ran back to the gentleman. He was still shaking, but at least now he was sitting in a chair near a heat source and not stuck to the mat like a melting snowman. "Sir, I'm going to make coffee, okay? Really hot coffee. Coffee that wakes up ancestors. Coffee that solves life problems. Stay with me here." She rushed behind the counter. "Coffee machine." Grace clapped her hands in front of the equipment. "I know I criticized you earlier. I know I said you were judging me. But we can work that out later in an appliance therapy session. Right now, I need you to work." She pressed the buttons. The machine made a noise that sounded like a tired sigh. "No, don't sigh at me. This isn't time for drama. Work." As if it had heard her, the machine started dripping coffee. Yes, you're a warrior, a survivor. I always believed in you." She grabbed the mug, almost dropping it in the process, and ran back to the gentleman. She sat in the chair next to him and held the mug close to his trembling hands. "Slowly, okay? Slowly, small sips. We don't want to add third-degree burns to tonight's list of problems." The man finally looked up. They were blue eyes, blue like the sky on a summer day, blue like the promise of good things, and despite everything there was something there that seemed amused. "You," his voice came out hoarse, weak. "Do you always talk to objects?" Grace blinked. "Oh, that." She felt her face get warm. You heard. I did. Great, wonderful. Now you know I'm completely peculiar. She nervously fixed her hair. Look, in my defense, objects are great listeners. They never interrupt me. They never disagree, and they never tell my secrets. The man gave what looked like the beginning of a smile. And does it work? Honestly, sometimes it does. She shrugged. The heater cooperated today, didn't it? I consider that a victory. He took a sip of coffee. Small, careful, and then he closed his eyes as if that liquid was the best thing he had experienced in years. Good coffee. Thank you. I threatened the machine before making it, so technically it was work under pressure, but the result is what matters. Grace got up and went to the kitchen. She came back with a bowl of soup left over from dinner, still hot thanks to the stove she forgot to turn off. For the first time in her life, her forgetfulness had been useful. Eat. You need food. Hot food. Food that hugs you from the inside. She placed the bowl in front of him and pulled up a chair for herself. She sat there, watching, making sure he was eating, that color was returning to his face, that the trembling was decreasing. And while doing this, something tightened in her chest, because Grace knew that cold. Not the cold from outside, the one from inside. The cold of being alone on a difficult night and having no one to pull you inside. No one to turn on a heater. No one to make coffee that wakes up ancestors. She was 29 years old. She had lost her parents at 19. She had learned to be her own anchor, her own cheerleader, her own company. And maybe that's why she talked to objects, because objects didn't leave. Objects didn't disappear. Objects stayed. Hey, the man's voice brought her back. Are you okay? Grace forced a smile. Me? Please? I'm great. You're the one who almost turned into an ice sculpture at my door. But he was looking at her differently now, in a way that said he had seen something she was trying to hide. What's your name? He asked. Grace. Grace Turner. Grace, he repeated as if he was storing the word in a safe place. I'm Albert. Nice to meet you, Albert. Sorry for the chaotic rescue method. I didn't have an instruction manual for man freezing at the diner door at 11 at night. He laughed. A low, weak, but genuine laugh. It was the best rescue I've ever received. Well, it was the only one I've ever done, so technically I'm unbeatable in the rankings. She got up to get more coffee. And while she walked to the machine, Albert watched her. He watched every movement, every word, every reaction. And he thought about his grandson. About his grandson who had forgotten how to smile. About his grandson who was raising his child alone. About his grandson who desperately needed someone like this. Someone who talked to objects, who transformed chaos into care, who had a heart too big for her own chest. Hey, machine, Grace murmured from the other side of the counter, thinking he wasn't listening. You're doing really well today. If you keep this up, I'm considering giving you a name, like Roberta, or Cremilda, or Mrs. Coffee. We'll see later. Albert smiled. When Grace came back with the full mug, she sat down next to him again and crossed her arms. Okay, Albert, now that you're no longer at risk of becoming a human popsicle, I need to know, is there someone I can call? Family? Friends? Someone who might be looking for you in this blizzard? Albert hesitated for a second. He thought about saying he didn't need anything, that he could call a taxi, that everything was fine. But something about that waitress. Maybe the way she looked at him with genuine concern, maybe the way she had just threatened a coffee machine on his behalf, made him want to be honest. My grandson, he said. Jordan, he's staying at a hotel here in Asheville. He came with me on this trip, but let's say I wanted to take a walk alone. Grace's eyes widened. A walk. Alone. In the middle of a blizzard. At night. When you put it that way, it sounds a little reckless. A little? Grace raised her eyebrows. Albert, with all due respect, this sounds like the script of a movie where the main character makes questionable decisions and the audience keeps screaming, "Don't do that," at the screen. Albert really laughed this time, a laugh that shook his shoulders and brought tears to his eyes. You're extraordinary, you know that? I'm a waitress who talks to appliances, Albert. Extraordinary is too generous a compliment. It's an honest compliment. Grace felt her face warm up again, but this time it wasn't from embarrassment. It was something different. Something she couldn't name. Okay. Give me your grandson's number before I start crying and the night gets even stranger. Albert dictated the number. Grace grabbed her cell phone, a device that had seen better days, just like her coat, and dialed. The phone rang twice before someone answered. The voice on the other end was deep, slightly hoarse, and carried noticeable tension. "Hi, good evening. This is Grace Turner from Blue Ridge Diner. Are you Jordan, Albert's grandson?" "I am. Is my grandfather okay? Where is he?" "I've been looking for him for over an hour. The blizzard is—" Easy. Grace interrupted with the calmest voice she could manage. "He's here with me. He's fine. He's warm, and he just had the best soup of my life, if I do say so myself." There was silence on the other end, then a long sigh. The kind of sigh that carries relief, exhaustion, and gratitude all at once. "Thank God." His voice cracked slightly. "I'll come over right now. What's the address?" Grace gave him the diner's address. When she hung up, she looked at Albert with her hands on her hips. "Your grandson seemed worried." "He's always worried." Albert smiled. "That's his way of loving." Grace felt something tighten in her chest again. Worry as a form of love. It was a concept she understood, but rarely had experienced directed toward her. "Well," she said, breaking the silence before it got too heavy, "while he's not here, do you want more coffee? More soup? I can make some reheated apple pie if you want. There's a slice left over from the afternoon shift." "Apple pie sounds perfect." "Great. Hey, oven." Grace walked to the kitchen. "I know you're tired, but I need one more favor. Just one. Then I'll leave you alone until tomorrow." Albert shook his head, smiling. That girl was a hurricane of humanity, of organized chaos, of unfiltered kindness. And he was absolutely certain of one thing. Jordan needed to really get to know her. Not just as the waitress who saved his grandfather on a blizzard night, but as the woman who could save his heart too. 20 minutes later, car headlights lit up the diner window. Grace looked outside and saw an elegant vehicle parking in front. The kind of car she had only seen in commercials, and that probably cost more than everything she would earn in the next 10 years. "I think your grandson's here," she said, trying not to seem impressed. The diner door opened, and a man walked in. Grace held her breath. He was tall, dark hair slightly messed up from rushing, brown eyes that carried exhaustion and relief at the same time. Strong jaw, broad shoulders, and an expression that mixed genuine concern with something that seemed to be soul exhaustion. "Grandpa." Jordan crossed the dining room in 3 long steps and knelt beside Albert, holding his hands. "Are you okay? What happened? Why did you go out alone in the middle of the blizzard?" "I'm fine, son." Albert put his hand on his grandson's face. "Thanks to this young woman here." Jordan turned to Grace, and for a second that seemed to last forever, his eyes met hers. Grace felt her stomach jump, then again, then a third time, just to make sure she was properly unsettled. "Hi," she waved. Why did she wave? Who waves like that? "I'm Grace, the waitress, who saved your grandfather. Not that I'm bragging. I mean, it was basically instinct, and the heater helped, and the coffee machine. It was a team effort, actually." She was rambling. She knew she was rambling, but her mouth simply wouldn't obey her brain. Jordan looked at her for another moment, and then, completely unexpectedly, he smiled. It was a small smile, tired, but real. "Thank you," he said. "Really. Thank you for taking care of him." "No need to thank me." Grace waved her hand as if she were shooing away the compliment. "Anyone would have done the same." "No," Jordan shook his head. "Not anyone, you." Grace didn't know what to answer, so she did what she always did when she didn't know what to do, looked away and changed the subject. "So, Mr. Albert had soup, coffee, and has a slice of apple pie waiting. Do you want to take it to go, or will he finish it here?" Jordan looked at his grandfather, who seemed suspiciously pleased with himself. "We'll finish here," Albert said. "If it's not a bother." "No bother at all." Grace was already walking to the kitchen. "Hey, oven, one more slice. And don't complain." Jordan watched her disappear behind the counter, still talking to the equipment like they were old friends. He turned to his grandfather. "Does she always talk to objects?" Albert smiled. That smile of someone who knew something nobody else knew. "Always. And that's exactly why I like her." Jordan frowned, not completely understanding. But Albert understood. Albert understood perfectly. Because that night, in the middle of a ridiculous blizzard, he hadn't just been saved by a waitress. He had found the person who would save his grandson, too. She just didn't know it yet. And honestly, neither did Jordan. But Albert knew. And that was enough for now. The Blue Ridge Diner's doorbell rang at 10:43 in the morning, and Grace Turner discovered that the universe had a very questionable sense of humor. She was behind the counter, humming a song that didn't exist, when she looked up and saw three figures walking in. Albert, the ridiculously handsome grandson, and a kid about 7 years old with messy hair and a smile that took up half his face. The dish towel slipped from her hand, then the order pad, then the pen. "Okay," she whispered to herself. "This is happening. This is really happening." Grace bent down to pick up the fallen objects and hit her forehead on the counter. The sound echoed through the entire diner. Ow. When she stood up, rubbing her forehead, all three were already walking toward her. Albert with that grandfather smile of someone who knows things. Jordan with an expression that mixed curiosity and amusement. And the boy practically bouncing. "Grace," Albert opened his arms like they were old friends. "I said I'd come back." "You did?" Grace blinked. "I mean, of course you did. I remember. Totally. 100%. She didn't remember. "This is my great-grandson, Luke." Albert put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "And you already know Jordan." Jordan waved, a simple wave, casual, as if he didn't have a jawline sculpted by Renaissance artists. "Hi again," he said. "Hi." Grace waved back. Why was she waving again? What was wrong with her and waving? "Welcome to the Blue Ridge Diner. Table for 3. "Of course, table for 3. You're 3 people. What a obvious question. She grabbed 3 menus and started walking toward a table by the window. On the way, she tripped over her own foot. Didn't fall, but did that embarrassing little run of someone pretending that tripping was part of the plan. "Act normal, Grace," she muttered to herself. Except she didn't mutter. She spoke. Out loud. Loud enough for everyone to hear. Luke burst out laughing. She talks to herself just like Grandpa. Jordan looked at his grandfather with a raised eyebrow. Albert shrugged with the innocence of an angel who had just hidden his wings. Grace placed the menus on the table with more force than she intended. One of them bounced and almost hit the sugar bowl. "Sorry," she said to the sugar bowl, then realized what she had done. "I just apologized to an inanimate object, in front of you guys. Again." "I thought it was polite," Luke said, completely serious. "Adults never apologize to things." Grace looked at the boy. Luke looked at her. And something in that look, something genuine and without judgment, made the knot in her stomach loosen a little bit. "You know what? You're right." She crouched down to his height. "Objects deserve respect, especially sugar bowls. They work hard and nobody appreciates them." Luke broke into a huge smile. "I like her," he announced to Jordan. "Can we keep her?" Jordan choked on his own air. "Luke, we don't keep people like that." "Why not?" "Because." Jordan looked at Grace, then at the ceiling, then anywhere that wasn't her face. "It's complicated. Adults always say that when they don't know the answer." Albert laughed, a satisfied laugh from someone watching exactly the show he wanted to see. Grace stood up, feeling her face burn. "So, what will you have? We have pancakes, eggs, bacon, waffles, toast." She started listing everything on the menu as if her life depended on it. "We also have coffee, juice, hot chocolate, tea if anyone's into that, regular milk, chocolate milk." "Grace," Jordan's voice interrupted her, calm, almost gentle. She stopped talking. "Breathe." Grace breathed and realized she had forgotten to do that for the last 30 seconds. "Sorry, I'm very much like this. I talk too much when I get nervous. And when I'm not nervous too. Actually, I just talk too much in general. It's a problem. I'm working on it. I'm not actually, but I should be." Jordan smiled. That little smile again, the same one from the night before. "3 hot chocolates," he said. "And whatever you recommend for food." "Pancakes," Luke slapped the table, "with chocolate topping and whipped cream and sprinkles. And diabetes," Jordan finished. "Let's share 1 order of regular pancakes, please." Grace wrote down the order, or tried to. The pen wasn't cooperating. "Hey," she whispered to the pen, "this isn't the time to go on strike. Work with me here." Luke tilted his head. "You talk to pens too?" "I talk to anything that stays still long enough." Grace finally got the pen to work. "It's a gift. It's a gift or a curse. Depends on the day." She went to the kitchen to put in the order, and used the 2 minutes away from the table to have a little private chat with the hot chocolate machine. "Okay, you're going to make 3 perfect hot chocolates. Don't let me down. The royal family apparently decided to become regular customers, and I'm one stumble away from having a nervous breakdown. The machine made a noise that Grace chose to interpret as agreement. When she came back with the drinks, she found Albert watching the diner with a thoughtful look, Jordan answering emails on his phone, and Luke building a tower with sugar packets. "Your tower looks impressive," Grace said as she placed the hot chocolate in front of him. "Thanks. It's the Empire State Building, just made of sugar and smaller." "Much smaller," Jordan murmured, putting away his phone. "Luke, don't make a mess." "It's not a mess, it's architecture." Grace laughed, a real laugh, and she realized it was the first time she'd laughed like that in weeks. Albert was watching her with that look again, that look that seemed to see more than she wanted to show. "Grace," he said, "why don't you sit with us while the order isn't ready?" "Oh, I can't. I'm working. I have to. Do things." "What things?" Albert asked with genuine curiosity. "The diner is empty." Grace looked around. He was right. There wasn't a single customer besides them. "I could clean the tables. They're clean. Organize the menus. Organized. Check if the sugar dispenser has forgiven me for the almost attack from earlier." Luke giggled again. "Please sit," the boy asked. "I want to know why you talk to things. Dad says it's weird, but I think it's cool." "Luke," Jordan ran his hand over his face. "I didn't say it was weird. I said it was different. Different is just a polite way of saying weird." Grace pulled up a chair before she could change her mind. And as she sat there, at that table, with that family she hadn't known for even 24 hours, a thought crossed her mind like a whisper. Maybe she wasn't good enough. Maybe she never would be. But for the first time in a long time, someone was asking her to stay. And that, by itself, was already more than she was used to receiving. The doorbell rang. Grace turned around, and her smile froze, because the woman who had just walked in was looking directly at the table, with an expression that made it clear this meeting wasn't a coincidence. The woman who entered the diner wasn't a threat. It was Martha, the manager, late as always and balancing a giant coffee in her hand. Grace let out the breath she didn't even know she was holding. "False alarm," she murmured to the salt shaker. "I thought it was a vengeful ex-girlfriend or something." "Do you always assume the worst?" Jordan asked, genuinely curious. "Always. It's a defense mechanism. If I expect the worst, anything better than that is a pleasant surprise." "That's surprisingly logical and incredibly sad at the same time." "Thanks, I try." Martha walked past the table and stopped when she saw Grace sitting with customers. "Turner, are you socializing? On work time?" "I can explain." "You don't need to." Martha looked at Albert, then at Jordan, then at the elegant car visible through the window. "You know what? Take the rest of the morning off. I'll cover." Grace's eyes widened. "Martha, you never gave me time off. Not even when I had that flu that made me sneeze for 3 straight days. And you spread germs all over the diner. Bad decision on my part." Martha shrugged. "Today I'm feeling generous. Go before I change my mind." Albert smiled like he had just won the lottery. "Perfect. Jordan will take you for a ride with us, to thank you for what you did yesterday." Grace blinked. Jordan blinked too. "Grandpa?" Jordan started. "Dad." Grace also started, before realizing Albert wasn't her father. "I mean, Sir Albert, Sir Albert." "Just Albert," he winked. "And I won't take no for an answer. You saved my life. The least we can do is show you the mountains from an angle that isn't through a diner window." Luke tugged on Grace's sleeve. "Please? Dad drives really slow and Grandpa only talks about boring stuff. I need someone cool in the car." "Hey," Jordan protested. "I'm cool. You're my dad. That doesn't count." Grace laughed, and before her brain could list all the reasons why this was a terrible idea, her mouth was already saying, "Okay, all right, just let me get my coat." 5 minutes later, she was standing in the parking lot, staring at the most intimidating vehicle she had ever seen in her life. It was black, shiny. It looked like it cost more than her apartment, the diner, and probably the entire block combined. "Is this a car or a spaceship?" she asked. "It's just a car," Jordan replied, unlocking the doors with a smooth click. "A car is that thing with 4 wheels and a noisy engine. This here is." Grace took a step back. "This here judges people. I can feel it." Luke opened the back door and jumped inside like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Come on, Grace, the seat is warm." "The seat is warm," she repeated to herself. Of course the seat is warm. Why wouldn't it be? Jordan opened the passenger door for her. A simple gesture, gentlemanly. The kind of thing Grace had only seen in old movies. She stood there for 3 whole seconds before realizing she needed to get in. Thank you. Sorry, I'm not used to this. She gestured vaguely at everything around. Doors? People opening doors for me. Jordan was quiet for a moment. Something passed through his eyes, something Grace couldn't identify. Then you're not used to it enough, he said quietly. Before she could process that, he was already walking around to the driver's side. Grace got in the car and immediately regretted it. The interior was all leather, real leather. The kind that probably came from cows that had health insurance and retirement plans. Okay, she whispered, running her hand over the dashboard. Hey, car, I need you to know that I respect you. Deeply. If you breathe near me, I'll cry. So let's keep this a relationship of mutual respect, okay? Through the rearview mirror, she saw Albert in the back seat next to Luke, smiling. Jordan started the engine. The car made a smooth purr that sounded like classical music. It purrs, Grace said, impressed. My car makes a sound like an asthmatic cat having an existential crisis. Yours purrs. Jordan laughed, a real laugh, loud. Are you always like this? He asked. Like what? Like you. Unfortunately, yes. I tried being different once. Lasted 4 hours. It was exhausting. I like it, Luke declared from the back seat. She's funny. They drove through the mountains for 20 minutes. Grace spent the time looking out the window, trying to process how she had gone from serving coffee to riding in a car that cost more than her annual salary. Jordan parked at a lookout point. The view was breathtaking. Snow-covered mountains, impossible blue sky, clouds that looked like cotton candy. Is this real? Grace asked, getting out of the car. What? All of this. She gestured at the landscape, the view, the car, you 3 showing up out of nowhere. Jordan stopped beside her. It's real. How do you know? Because dreams don't have this pine smell. Grace took a deep breath. He was right. Okay, it's real. She crossed her arms. What doesn't make sense is why you're doing this. Doing what? Including me. I'm a waitress, Jordan. You all are clearly. She looked at the car, at his coat, at the watch on his wrist. You're from another planet. Jordan was quiet. My grandfather likes you, he said finally. Luke likes you. And I? He stopped. I haven't laughed like that in a long time. Grace didn't know what to say. On the other side of the lookout, Albert watched the 2 of them with Luke beside him. Grandpa, the boy whispered. Daddy is smiling again. I know. Is it because of her? Albert put his hand on his great-grandson's shoulder. This girl is going to change everything, Luke. She just doesn't know it yet. And while Grace and Jordan stood there side by side, looking at the mountains, neither of them realized that this moment was the first step of something neither of them was prepared to face. Because Jordan Baxter's world wasn't made just of luxury cars and beautiful views. It was made of expectations, of stares, of people who wouldn't accept a waitress from Asheville so easily. And Grace was about to find that out in the worst possible way. 3 days passed. 3 days in which Grace convinced herself that the mountain trip had been a collective dream, a hallucination from too much caffeine, or maybe a delayed hypothermia episode. Then the doorbell rang at 2:27 in the afternoon, and Jordan Baxter walked into the Blue Ridge Diner. Alone. Grace was filling up the napkin dispenser when she saw him. Her fingers forgot how to work. The napkins flew everywhere like a small paper explosion. No, she whispered to herself, bending down to pick up the mess. No, no, no. This is not happening. What's not happening? The voice came from above. Grace looked up. Jordan was standing right in front of her, looking down with an expression that mixed curiosity and amusement. Nothing. She got up too fast. Hit her hip on the counter. Ow. Are you okay? Perfectly. 100%. Never been better. She adjusted her apron as if that would fix something. What are you doing here? I mean, welcome to the diner that you already know, because you've been here before. Twice. Jordan bit his lower lip, clearly trying not to laugh. I came for coffee. Coffee, of course. Coffee. We have coffee. Lots of coffee. It's pretty much the only thing we do well here. Grace gestured to the counter. Sit, anywhere, except there. She pointed to a stool. That one wobbles. I already asked the owner to fix it, but he thinks it adds charm. And it doesn't? It adds lawsuits waiting to happen. Jordan laughed, a short laugh but real. Grace felt her stomach do a flip. He sat at the counter, not on the wobbly stool, and rested his elbows on the surface. No grandfather, no Luke. Just him, with those brown eyes that seemed to see more than Grace wanted to show. "So," she said, grabbing a mug, "black coffee? With milk? With sugar? With a little existential despair? That last one's on the house." "Black's fine." "Black. Straight to the point. I like that." She turned to the coffee machine. "Hey, Cremilda, behave yourself. We have important company." "Cremilda?" Grace froze. She'd forgotten he was listening. "It's the coffee machine's name. We kind of understand each other now." "You named the coffee machine." She deserved recognition for good work. Grace filled the mug, trying to ignore the heat rising up her neck. "Here you go." She turned to hand him the coffee, and that's when gravity decided to attack. Her foot found a puddle of water that wasn't there 2 seconds before. The mug flew. The coffee flew. Grace flew, or at least seemed to fly, because suddenly she was gripping the counter like her life depended on it, and Jordan was standing holding her arm. "Are you okay?" His voice was close, very close. Grace looked up. His face was inches from hers. She swallowed hard. "Gravity stalks me. It's personal at this point." Jordan didn't let go of her arm right away. For 1 second that seemed to last an hour, they stood there, still looking at each other. Then Grace noticed she had spilled coffee on his shoe. "Oh no." She pulled away, grabbing napkins frantically. Sorry, I'm a walking disaster. Literally. I should come with a warning that says caution, hazard area." She bent down to clean his shoe and hit her forehead on the counter. Again. Ow. And that's when it happened. Jordan started laughing. Not a polite laugh, not a restrained laugh. A real laugh, loud, that shook his shoulders and made his eyes water. Grace stood there, napkins in hand, watching. "Are you laughing at me?" Jordan shook his head, still laughing. "No, I'm laughing with you." "I'm not laughing." "You should be." He finally managed to control himself, but the smile remained. "Grace, I haven't laughed like that in years." Her heart jumped. Years is a long time. "It is." His smile got smaller, softer, "but you make it seem easy." Grace didn't know what to do with that information, so she did what she always did, deflected. "Well, glad to be helpful. I'll make another coffee. This one I promise not to turn into a shoe-destroying weapon." She turned to the machine but could feel his eyes on her back. Burning, watching. "Grace. Why do you think I was laughing at you?" She stopped. The question was simple, but the answer wasn't. "Because." She didn't turn around. "Because that's what people do. Laugh at me. At the weird waitress who talks to objects and trips over her own feet. I don't think you're weird. You're too polite to admit it." "I'm many things, Grace. Too polite isn't one of them." She finally turned around. He was looking at her with an intensity that made the air thicker. "So what do you think of me?" Jordan opened his mouth to answer. The doorbell rang. An elderly man walked in, taking off his snow-covered hat and looking around for a table. Grace blinked, breaking the moment. "I need to take this order." She pointed to the customer with her order pad. "Work. You know how it is." "I know." Jordan picked up the coffee mug she had just filled, this time without any disasters. "I'll wait." "Wait?" For the answer. He took a sip of coffee, his eyes still fixed on her. "I'm not going anywhere." Grace felt her face burn as she walked over to the customer. Her hands trembled slightly. Her heart was beating too fast. And when she looked back, Jordan was still looking at her, with that smile. That smile that said something had changed. And Grace didn't know if she was ready to find out what. Jordan waited. Exactly like he promised. The pie was a success. So much so that Albert demanded a second slice. Luke licked the plate and Margaret asked for the recipe, even though Grace insisted there wasn't one. A week later, Jordan called with a different invitation. "Luke wants to go to the park, and he specifically asked for you to come." He asked, or you're using a 7-year-old as an excuse? Silence on the other end of the line. "He asked," Jordan said finally, "but I wouldn't have turned down the idea." Grace smiled at the phone as if he could see her. "What time?" On Saturday at 2 in the afternoon, she was at Riverside Park, watching Luke run toward the playground like his life depended on it. "He has 2 modes, Jordan said, stopping beside her. "Sleeping and hurricane, there's no middle ground." "I was the same way. My mom used to say I was born without a pause button." Jordan looked at her curiously but didn't ask more. Grace silently thanked him for that. "Grace!" Luke waved from the top of the slide. "Come play." "I'm an adult, Luke. Adults don't know how to have fun. That's why they're so tired all the time." Jordan stifled a laugh. He has a point. He's 7 years old. 7 years of pure wisdom. Grace looked at the slide, then at Jordan, then at the slide again. "If I break something, you pay for the hospital." "Deal." 10 minutes later, Grace was at the top of the monkey bars, questioning all the decisions that led her there. "Okay," she said to the metal bar. "Are you going to cooperate or go on strike? Because I need to get down and my hands are sweating." "You're talking to the playground equipment?" Luke asked, hanging upside down next to her. "I talk to everything. You already know this." "I know, but it's funny every time." Grace finally managed to get down, with the grace of a newborn giraffe. Her feet touched the ground at the exact moment she lost her balance and fell sitting in the sand. Luke laughed so loud that birds flew from a nearby tree. Jordan appeared, extending his hand to help her up. "Are you okay?" "My pride is hurt. The rest survives." She accepted his hand, and when she stood up, she noticed he didn't let go right away. For a second, they stood there, hands linked, eyes connected. "Are you going to hold hands all day?" Luke asked. "Because I'm hungry." Grace dropped the hand like it was on fire. "Hungry? Yes. Food. Let's take care of that." They went to a snack stand in the park. Grace insisted on paying for the hot dogs. "You fed me 5-star restaurant food. The least I can do is return the favor with processed sausage." Jordan laughed in that way that made her stomach flip. They sat at a picnic table. Luke attacked the food like he hadn't eaten dinner yesterday. Grace tried to eat with dignity, but the hot dog sauce had other plans. A drop ran down her chin. Then another. Then the whole sauce decided to make a waterfall toward her blouse. "No, no, no." She tried to clean it, but only spread it more. "Why can't I eat a single meal without looking like a 3-year-old? "Because you attack food like a 3-year-old, Luke said, offering a napkin. "But it's okay. I do too." Jordan watched the scene with a smile that Grace couldn't figure out. "What?" she asked, still fighting the mustard stain. "Nothing. He stopped, started again. "It's been a long time since I had a day like this. A day of mustard stains and falls in the sand. A light day." His smile became smaller, more sincere. Luke hasn't laughed like this in a long time, since his mother. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Grace felt something tighten in her chest. "I understand," she said quietly. "Losing people changes us." Jordan looked at her. "Did you lose someone?" "My parents, 10 years ago." Grace played with the stained napkin. "Car accident. I was 19. One day I had a family. The next I was alone signing papers I didn't understand." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was respectful. "I'm sorry," Jordan said. "I felt it too, for a long time." Grace shrugged, trying to seem lighter than she felt. "But we learned to survive, to be our own company, to talk to objects because they won't leave." "Grace, it's okay." She forced a smile. "I'm fine, really. I just get weird sometimes when the subject comes up." Luke, who had been quiet, something rare, stood up and walked over to her. Without saying anything, he hugged her. A child's hug, tight, sincere, without judgment. Grace felt her eyes sting. "You're nice, Grace," Luke said against her shoulder. "I don't want you to be sad." "I'm not sad, sweetie." "Yes, you are. But that's okay. Dad gets sad sometimes too. Then I hug him and it gets better." Grace looked at Jordan over Luke's head. He was watching them both with an expression she couldn't name. Something between gratitude and something else. Something deeper. "Thank you, Luke," she whispered. "It got better." The boy stepped back with a satisfied smile. "I'm good at hugs. It's my superpower." "That's a great superpower." The rest of the afternoon passed in a fog of laughter, games, and small moments that felt enormous. Grace pushed Luke on the swing until her arms ached. Jordan bought ice cream for everyone and pretended not to notice when she dropped a scoop of chocolate on her shoe. Luke found a lost dog in the park and almost convinced his dad to adopt it. When the sun started to set, they walked back to the parking lot. "I had fun," Grace said, stopping beside the car. "Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for coming." Jordan opened the door for Luke to get in the back seat. "Grace, he hesitated, opened his mouth, closed it. "Nothing. Just thank you for making him happy." A pause. "For making me happy too?" Grace didn't know what to answer, so she just smiled, and when the car drove away, she stood there in the empty parking lot with her heart beating too fast. Because something had changed that afternoon. Something she wasn't ready to admit, but it was already too late to ignore. He stayed there for more than an hour, drinking 3 coffees, refusing food, and watching Grace serve customers as if it were the most fascinating thing in the world. When the diner finally emptied, he got up and walked over to her. "Tomorrow," he said, "are you free in the evening?" Grace dropped the dish towel. Again. "Tomorrow evening? Why? What's tomorrow? Is it a holiday? Is someone getting married? Is someone in trouble? None of the above." Jordan smiled. "My grandfather wants you to have dinner with us. At our house." Grace frowned. "Wait, at your house? But Mr. Albert said you were staying here in Asheville." Jordan chuckled. "We moved to town recently. He's still getting used to it. Sometimes he talks like it's temporary, but the house is already ours." "You moved to Asheville," Grace repeated slowly. "Here, permanently." "Permanently. Why?" "My grandfather wanted a quieter place. Luke needed a fresh start." He paused. "I did too, actually." Grace processed that. "Okay, and why me?" "Because my grandfather won't stop talking about you, and Luke asks every day when the funny lady is coming back." Jordan took a step closer. "I'll pick you up at 7. Where do you live?" Grace opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "You're gonna pick me up? I'm not gonna let you drive there alone at night." "I have a car." "I know, the one that sounds like an asthmatic cat. It's sensitive but functional." "Grace." Jordan tilted his head. "Let me pick you up." She wanted to argue, wanted to say she was independent, that she didn't need to be picked up, but the way he looked at her made the words disappear. "Okay, 7 o'clock, blue building on Oak Street, apartment 4B. I'll be there." The next day, at 7 sharp, Grace heard the horn. She had been ready for 40 minutes, had changed clothes 6 times, had talked to the mirror for 10 minutes. "It's not a date," she told her reflection. "It's dinner, with his grandfather, and the child. Dates don't have grandfathers and children." The mirror didn't answer, but she felt it disagreed. When she went downstairs, Jordan was leaning against the car. He opened the passenger door for her. "You look beautiful," he said. Grace stumbled getting into the car. "Thank you. You too. I mean, you look presentable, normal, standard good appearance." She closed her eyes. "I'm gonna stop talking now." Jordan laughed as he walked around to the driver's side. 20 minutes later, the car stopped in front of a mansion that left Grace speechless. Huge windows, perfect landscaping, a circular driveway with an illuminated fountain, the kind of place where kings retire. "Is this a house or a castle?" she asked. "It's just a house." "Jordan, houses have 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. This place has an east wing." He laughed and opened the door for her. Luke was already at the entrance, wearing a dress shirt that someone had clearly forced him to put on. "Grace!" He ran to her. "You came. Margaret made chicken with special potatoes, and there are candles on the table. It looks like a wedding." "Luke," Jordan sighed, "filter. You still haven't bought me one." Grace stifled a laugh as she walked in. The interior was even more impressive. Crystal chandeliers, paintings that looked like originals, a staircase that belonged in a period movie. Albert appeared at the top of the stairs, coming down like it was a grand entrance. "Grace, our guest of honor has arrived." "Guest of honor is an exaggeration. I'm just the waitress who reheated a pie." "Modesty. I love modesty." A gray-haired lady appeared, wearing a spotless apron. "Dinner is served, Mr. Baxter." "Thank you, Margaret." Albert offered his arm to Grace. "May I escort you to the dining room?" Grace looked at Jordan, asking for help. He just smiled and gestured for her to accept. The dining room made Grace want to cry and laugh at the same time. Solid wood table for 12 people, lit candles, crystal glasses, plates that probably cost more than her rent, and fresh flowers in the center, as if this was normal. "I'm underdressed," she whispered to Jordan as she sat down. "You look perfect." "I'm wearing the dress I bought at an end-of-season sale." "And you look perfect in it." Grace felt her face burn. Dinner was surreal. Margaret served roasted chicken with herbs, golden potatoes, grilled vegetables, and a sauce that Grace was sure contained ingredients she couldn't pronounce. "This is incredible," she said after the first bite. "Margaret is the best," Luke said with his mouth full. "She even makes broccoli taste good." "And broccoli is the saddest vegetable that exists." "Luke, Chew before you talk, Jordan said. I am chewing and talking, multitasking. Albert burst out laughing. During dinner, Grace discovered that conversations in mansions weren't so different from conversations at the diner. Albert told stories. Luke interrupted with unfiltered comments. Jordan watched everything with that look that made her stomach flip. Grace, Albert said while Margaret cleared the plates, I have a special request. Oh no, Grace straightened her posture. Special requests make me nervous. Dessert. He smiled. I want you to make the apple pie. Here, now, in my kitchen. Mr. Albert, I already explained that pie was reheated, I know, but you have a gift. I felt affection in that pie. That was vegetable shortening. That was love. Jordan hid his laughter behind his napkin. Grace looked around the table. At Luke, who was already excited about the idea of dessert. At Albert, with that grandfather-like expectation. At Jordan, who watched her as if she was capable of anything. Fine, I'll try, but if it's a disaster, it's your fault. The kitchen was the size of her apartment, professional equipment, a marble center island, and Margaret, who looked at Grace with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. You can use whatever you need, dear, Margaret said. Thank you. Grace looked at the bag of sugar on the counter. Okay, sugar. Now is not the time for a breakdown. We need to impress. Margaret blinked. She talks to ingredients? She talks to everything, Luke said proudly. It's her charm. An hour later, the pie came out of the oven. Golden, fragrant, surprisingly presentable. You're good at this, Jordan said, standing beside her. At improvising? At turning chaos into something special. Grace didn't know what to answer, because she was happy and that scared her. Grace? Luke tugged at her sleeve. Will you come back? She looked at the hope in his eyes. We'll see. But when she looked at Jordan, she saw that he understood. And the determination in his eyes said he wasn't going to give up. 2 weeks had passed since the day at the park. 2 weeks of messages, phone calls, and a growing feeling that Grace refused to name. Then Albert called. Grace, dear, we're organizing a charity event here at the mansion. Nothing too big, just 200 people. Grace choked on her coffee. 200 people is nothing too big? By the family's standards, it's practically intimate. Albert laughed. The driver will pick you up at 7. And don't worry about clothes. I took the liberty of sending something. Driver? Sending something? What does this? The doorbell rang. Grace opened the door and found a delivery person holding a huge black box with a gold bow. Miss Turner? That's me, I think. She signed the receipt in shock and took the box inside. When she opened it, she completely lost the ability to speak. The dress was navy blue, long, with a fabric that felt like liquid in her hands. Along with it were shoes, a small purse, and a handwritten card. For tonight's star, with love, Albert. Grace looked at the dress, then at the mirror, then at the dress again. Okay, she said to the fabric. You're clearly more expensive than everything I own. Let's make a deal. You don't tear, I don't cry. Deal? At 7 o'clock sharp, a black limousine parked in front of her building. Grace walked down the stairs feeling like an imposter in her own body. The driver, a gentleman with gray hair and an impeccable uniform, opened the door with a kind smile. Miss Turner, I'm Gerald. Mr. Baxter sent me. Thank you, Gerald. She got in the car trying not to look impressed. This is bigger than my apartment. Gerald laughed. Mr. Albert said you were funny. I prefer embarrassingly honest, but funny works. When they arrived at the mansion, Grace felt her stomach drop. Lights everywhere. Luxury cars parked in a row, people in clothes that cost more than her annual salary going in and out. Breathe, Grace, she whispered to herself. It's just a party, with 200 rich people, in a mansion, no big deal. Gerald opened the door for her. Good luck, miss. I'm going to need it. She walked up the entrance steps and immediately began talking to the decor. Okay, staircase, she whispered while climbing the marble steps. You're beautiful and intimidating. I respect that. Just don't let me fall, please. In the main hall, a crystal chandelier hung from the ceiling like a private constellation. Grace looked up. Hey, chandelier, don't fall on me, please. I'm in the worst phase of life to deal with decorative tragedies. Are you talking to the chandelier? Grace turned around. Jordan was there, impeccable in a dark suit, looking at her like she was the only person in the room. It looks heavy. I'm doing preventive diplomacy. Jordan didn't respond immediately. He stood there, looking her up and down. What? Grace looked down. Is it wrong? Did I put it on wrong? You look stunning. Grace felt her face burn. It's the dress. Your grandfather has good taste. It's not the dress. Jordan took a step forward. It's you. Before she could respond, Albert appeared beaming. Grace, you look magnificent. I knew it would be perfect. You shouldn't have done this. I do what I want. Privilege of age. He winked. Come, I want to introduce you to some people. The next hour was a whirlwind of faces and names. Grace tried to memorize them all, but after the 10th, nice to meet you, she was already lost. That's when a woman approached. Blonde, impeccable, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. So you're the famous Grace. Her voice was sweet like poison. Victoria Baxter, Jordan's cousin. Nice to meet you. Grace extended her hand. Victoria looked at her hand like it was something dirty. Albert told me about you, the waitress who saved him in the snowstorm. She tilted her head. What a charming story, like a daytime movie. Grace felt her stomach drop. I just did what anyone would do. Of course you did. Victoria smiled. And now you're here, in a borrowed dress, at a party that isn't yours. She moved closer, lowering her voice. Enjoy it while it lasts, dear. Makeshift waitresses don't usually last long in this world. Victoria walked away before Grace could respond. Grace looked around, at the rich people, at the expensive dresses, at the world that wasn't hers. Hey, Jordan appeared beside her. Are you okay? I am. Of course. She forced a smile. I just need some air. In the garden, Grace found a stone bench among the rose bushes. Hey, bench, she whispered. You look solid. I need something solid right now. Grace? Jordan appeared on the stone path. What happened? Nothing. You're crying. Grace touched her face. She was. I don't belong here, Jordan. This dress isn't mine. This party isn't mine. This life isn't mine. Grace. Victoria's right. I'm just a waitress, and eventually you'll realize that. Jordan sat beside her and took her hand. Do you want to know what I see when I look at you? Grace didn't respond. I see the woman who saved my grandfather without expecting anything, who makes my son laugh for the first time in years, who talks to objects because she has a heart that's too big. He squeezed her hand. Victoria doesn't know anything about you. But I do. And I choose you. Why? Because you're the only real person I've met in a long time. Before Grace could respond, a voice cut through the air. Jordan! Victoria was at the garden door with a triumphant smile. Your father just arrived, and he's asking who the waitress is. Victoria's triumphant smile hung in the air like a threat. Your father is asking who the waitress is. Grace felt the world shrink. The garden, the rose bushes, the party lights, everything became blurred. Only that word remained echoing in her head. Waitress, waitress, waitress. She got up from the bench, ready to run, to disappear, to pretend she had never set foot in that mansion. But Jordan was faster. Great. He stood up, adjusting his suit with a calm that Grace didn't understand. Let's introduce her. Victoria blinked. What? You said my father wants to meet Grace, so let's introduce her. Jordan extended his hand to Grace. Come with me? Grace looked at his hand, then at Victoria, then at his hand again. I don't think that. Trust me. 2 words, simple, but the way he said it, looking into her eyes without hesitation, made something change. Grace took his hand. In the main hall, a man with graying hair and imposing posture was talking with a group of businessmen. He had the same eyes as Jordan, brown, intense, but there was something harder there. Dad, Jordan stopped beside him. I want to introduce you to someone. The man turned around. His eyes looked Grace up and down, evaluating, measuring. This is Grace Turner, Jordan continued, the woman who saved Grandpa's life. Jordan's father, Richard, tilted his head. So you're the famous waitress. I am. Grace lifted her chin. And you must be the famous absent father that Luke never mentions. Silence. Jordan choked. Victoria dropped her champagne glass, and then, against all expectations, Richard Baxter laughed. She has personality. He looked at Jordan. I understand the interest. It's not interest, Dad, it's respect. Richard studied his son for a long moment. We'll talk later. He turned to Grace. It was a pleasure, Miss Turner. Richard walked away. Victoria shot a venomous look before following. Jordan let out his breath. Sorry about that. You just defended me in front of your father. I defended the truth. You called him an absent father, in front of everyone. You said it first. Grace felt her face burn. I don't know what got into me. The words just came out. I do this when I get nervous. I say things, lots of things. Like now. I should stop. Why am I not stopping? Come on. Jordan intertwined his fingers with hers. Let's get out of here. They escaped through the back of the mansion, crossing a stone path to a gazebo at the end of the garden. Away from the lights, away from the stairs, away from everything. Grace could finally breathe. Okay, she said to the gazebo railing. Thank you for existing. I need emotional support right now. You're thanking the railing? It deserves recognition. Jordan laughed. That laugh that Grace loved. You were incredible in there. I was a disaster. You were honest. Most people at that party spend their lives pretending. You're the only one who says what she thinks. That's not a quality, it's a social disability. To me, it's the most refreshing thing I've ever seen. Grace looked at him. The moonlight illuminated his face. Why did you defend me? She asked. Nobody at that party approves. I don't need their approval. Jordan looked at the sky. I spent years trying to be perfect. And you know what I got? A marriage that fell apart. A distant relationship with my son, a life that seemed like a script written by someone else. Rouse. Grace remained silent. When my wife passed away, Jordan continued, I realized I had wasted years trying to please people who would never be satisfied. So I stopped. I moved here. I started over. I understand that, Grace said quietly, wanting to be happy but not knowing how. Jordan turned to her. What do you want, Grace? She stopped. I want to stop being plan B. What do you mean? My whole life I've been the second choice, the friend they look for when they have nobody else, the employee who covers everyone's shift. She looked at her own hands. I'm afraid of being forgotten, of disappearing and nobody noticing. Grace. Jordan's voice was closer. Look at me. She lifted her eyes. He was inches away from her. I can't stop thinking about you. The words came out like a confession. Since the first night at the diner, since you fought with the heater and gave the coffee machine a name. Grace felt her heart race. Jordan, you're not plan B. You never were. He touched her face. You're the first person in a long time who made me want to wake up in the morning. Grace forgot how to breathe. I'm narrating this in my head, she whispered. Like, okay, Grace, the handsome man is touching your face. Don't freak out. Don't freak out. You're freaking out. Jordan laughed softly. You're impossible. I know, it's part of the charm. He leaned in closer. Can I kiss you? You're asking permission? Always. Grace felt the world stop. Yes. Jordan closed the distance between them. His lips met hers with a softness that surprised her. It was gentle, careful, like he was holding something precious that might break. Grace closed her eyes and let herself go. When they pulled apart, she couldn't speak for a few seconds. Wow, she finally whispered. I wasn't narrating anything just now. My brain completely shut off. Jordan smiled against her lips. Is that good or bad? I don't know. Do it again so I can be sure. He laughed and kissed her again. They stayed there for hours, talking, laughing, kissing, looking at the stars while the party continued inside without them. At some point, they sat on the gazebo floor, their backs against the railing, fingers intertwined. I've never done this, Grace said. Done what? Been like this, with someone, without rushing, without waiting for it to end. Jordan squeezed her hand. It doesn't have to end. Everything ends, Jordan. Maybe. He turned to her. But while it doesn't end, it's worth enjoying. Grace rested her head on his shoulder. The moon was full, the air was cold, and for the first time in a long while, she didn't want to be anywhere else. When Grace opened her eyes, the sun was rising. She blinked, once, twice, and then panic hit. No. She was lying in the gazebo. Jordan was sleeping beside her, his suit wrinkled, his hair messy. At some point during the night, they had fallen asleep right there, under the stars. Grace got up slowly, trying not to wake him. The party was over. The cars were gone. The mansion was silent. Okay, Grace, she murmured to herself. You slept at a billionaire's house, in the garden, after kissing his son. This is totally normal. No freaking out. She was freaking out. With her shoes in hand, Grace tiptoed across the garden. If she could reach the gate, she could call a taxi and pretend nothing had happened. She was almost reaching the entrance when a voice made her freeze. Going somewhere, dear? Albert was sitting on a bench near the fountain, a cup of coffee in hand, as if he'd been waiting for her. Grace closed her eyes. Please tell me I'm dreaming. You're not. Albert smiled. Coffee? She sighed and walked over to him, defeated. How long have you been here? Long enough to see you trying to escape like a teenager after curfew. He patted the bench. Sit. Grace sat. This is embarrassing. Why? Because I slept in the garden with your grandson after a gala. So what? Grace looked at him. So what? I'm a waitress, Albert. Victoria made that very clear yesterday. Your son made that clear. Everyone at that party knew I don't belong here. Albert took a sip of coffee. You know what the first thing I thought was when you pulled me into that diner during the snowstorm? That I was completely crazy? That you were the most genuine person I'd ever met. He turned to her. You didn't help me because I was rich. You didn't know who I was. You helped me because it was the right thing to do. Grace didn't respond. My grandson has spent years surrounded by people who wanted something from him. Money, status, connections. Albert put his hand on her shoulder. You're the first person who just wants him, and that's more valuable than anything. Grace's eyes stung. I'm scared, she admitted, of not being enough. Enough for who? For him, for Luke, for this world. Albert smiled gently. Dear, you're already more than enough. You just need to believe it. Footsteps approached. Jordan appeared, his hair still messy, his eyes searching until he found her. You disappeared. I was trying not to cause more embarrassment. You slept with me under the stars. That's not embarrassment. That's the most perfect date I've ever had. Grace felt her face burn. Albert stood up, smiling. I'll leave you two to talk. Margaret should be preparing breakfast. When he walked away, Jordan sat beside Grace. Were you running away? I was making a strategic retreat. It's the same thing. Not when you use fancy words. Jordan laughed and took her hand. Stay for breakfast? Grace looked at the mansion, at the rising sun, at the man beside her. Okay, she said, but if I drop something at the table, it's your fault. Jordan smiled. I'll take the risk. And as they walked back to the mansion together, Grace realized something. For the first time, she wasn't running away. She was staying. 1 week, 7 days, 168 hours of quiet happiness. Grace didn't know that happiness had an expiration date, but she was about to find out. It all started on a Tuesday, when Martha showed up at the diner with that look of someone who had just discovered a juicy secret. Grace Turner. She threw her purse on the counter. You became a celebrity and didn't tell me? Grace almost dropped the coffee pot. What are you talking about? I'm talking about how I spent the weekend at my sister-in-law's house in Charleston. You know, the one who thinks she's rich because she has a plastic pool. And guess what everyone was talking about? I have no idea. You, Martha crossed her arms. Apparently, a waitress from Asheville is hunting the Baxter heir, a gold-digging opportunist who came out of nowhere and is taking advantage of a vulnerable widower. Grace's world stopped. What? They're saying you're hunting billionaires. Martha rolled her eyes. I told them you can barely hunt for tips, no offense. Who's saying this? Apparently it started with someone in the family. A cousin, I think. Victoria something. Grace felt her stomach sink. Victoria. Hey, Martha tilted her head. Are you okay? You look pale. I'm fine. Grace put the pot on the counter harder than she meant to. I need to go to the bathroom. She practically ran. In the tiny diner bathroom, Grace leaned on the sink and stared at her own reflection. Okay, she whispered. This is happening. People are talking about you. Rich people. People who think you're a gold digger. The reflection didn't answer. You knew this was going to happen. You knew you didn't belong in that world. And now you're hurting him, Jordan. His reputation, his family. She closed her eyes. You need to stay away. It's the right thing to do. When she came out of the bathroom, she had made a decision. In the days that followed, Grace built a wall. She ignored Jordan's first call, and the second, and the third. When he texted asking if everything was okay, she replied with an, everything's great, just busy. That was the most obvious lie of the century. When he showed up at the diner on Thursday, Grace saw his car parking and ran to the kitchen. Martha, cover for me. What? Why? I just sat down. Please, I owe you one. You owe me 17, but fine. Grace hid among the pots for 20 minutes, listening to Martha serve Jordan with all the subtlety of an elephant. She's not here. I mean, she is, but she's not available. I mean, do you want coffee? When Jordan finally left, Grace came out of the kitchen feeling like the worst person in the world. Okay, Martha said, blocking her path. What's going on? Nothing. Grace, You just hid from a gorgeous man who's clearly in love with you. That's not nothing. It's complicated. Complicated as a tax return. This here is you running from happiness. What's the real problem? Grace felt her eyes burn. I'm hurting him, Martha. The rumors, the reputation, I'm a problem in his life. You're the best thing that happened to him. Anyone with eyes can see that. You don't understand. Then explain it to me. But Grace couldn't, because explaining meant admitting the truth. She didn't think she deserved to be happy. She never had. The days passed in a gray blur. Grace went back to her old routine. Wake up, work, sleep, repeat. No goodnight texts. No laughter in the park. No dinners in mansions. She didn't talk to objects anymore. Cremilda, the coffee machine, stayed silent. The heater, too. It was as if a part of her had shut down along with happiness. Martha noticed. The customers noticed. Even the sugar bowls seemed to notice. You're different, Martha said one morning. I'm tired. You're sad and stubborn. A terrible combination. Grace didn't respond. On the other side of town, in a mansion that was too quiet, a 7-year-old boy was asking questions no one wanted to answer. Dad. Jordan looked up from his laptop. Luke was standing in the office doorway, holding a fork. What is it, son? Where's Grace? The name hurt more than Jordan expected. She's busy. Busy doing what? Working. Does she work every day? Most people work every day, Luke. But she could work and come here too. She used to do that before. Jordan didn't know what to answer. Luke looked at the fork in his hand. I tried talking to the fork, like she does, but it didn't work. He looked at his father with sad eyes. I think it only works when she's here. Jordan felt his chest tighten. Come here. He opened his arms. Luke ran and jumped into his father's lap. I want her to come back. Me too, son. Then why don't you go get her? Because. Jordan stopped. Because why? Because she wasn't answering his calls? Because she was clearly avoiding him? Because he was afraid to find out she had changed her mind? Adults are complicated, Luke said with the wisdom of someone who was almost 8 years old. We really are. You should be simpler, like children. Jordan kissed the top of his son's head. Maybe you're right. That night, Grace was closing the diner when her cell phone rang. It wasn't Jordan. It was Albert. She almost didn't answer, but something, maybe guilt, maybe longing, made her finger slide to the green button. Hello? Grace. Albert's voice was serious. We need to talk. Mr. Albert, tomorrow, at the diner, 10 in the morning. A pause. And don't run away this time. I'm old, but I can still run. The call ended before she could respond. Grace looked at her phone. This isn't going to be good, she murmured to Cremilda. The coffee machine didn't respond. But for the first time in days, Grace wished it had responded. Because tomorrow, she would have to face something she had been avoiding. The truth. At 10 o'clock sharp, Albert Baxter's black limousine parked in front of the Blue Ridge Diner, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Grace, who was pretending to organize napkins for the 10th time, felt her stomach sink. Hey, napkins, she whispered. Wish me luck. I'm going to need it. Martha appeared beside her, looking out the window. Is that a limousine? Yes. And that elegant gentleman getting out of it is who I think it is. Probably. Grace Turner. Martha crossed her arms. What kind of life are you living that I don't know about? Albert entered the diner before Grace could answer. Gerald, the driver, stayed outside, looking like a bodyguard from a movie. Grace. Albert walked to the counter with the confidence of someone who owned the world, which, technically, he kind of did. We need to talk. Mr. Albert, I can explain. Not here. He looked around. Is there somewhere more private? Martha pointed toward the back. There's the break room, which is basically a closet with a chair, but it works. Perfect. Grace was led to the break room, which really was a closet with a chair, feeling like a student going to the principal's office. Albert closed the door and turned to her. You're running away from my grandson. It wasn't a question. I'm not running away. I'm strategically distancing myself. It's the same thing, not when you use different words. Albert stared at her for a long moment. Then, to her surprise, he laughed. You're stubborn. I like that. He sat in the only available chair. But it's also the most irritating thing in the world when used for the wrong reasons. Grace stood there, not knowing what to do with her hands. Mr. Albert, I know about the rumors, about what people are saying. I don't want to hurt Jordan, or Luke, or you. Do you know who started those rumors? Victoria. Victoria. Albert repeated the name as if it were something bitter. My great niece has many talents. Unfortunately, kindness isn't one of them. She's not wrong, Grace said quietly. I'm a waitress. I don't belong in your world. And who decides that? Her? Albert shook his head. Grace, sit down. There's no other chair. Then sit on the floor. I don't care. Just stop standing there like you're about to run away. Grace sat on the floor, her back against the wall. It was ridiculous. A billionaire in an old chair and her on the floor of a broom closet. But somehow it felt right. I need to tell you something, Albert said. About that night during the snowstorm. You almost froze. I made coffee. There's not much to tell. Yes, there is. He leaned forward. I wasn't lost, Grace. I knew exactly where I was. Grace frowned. What do you mean? I was in Asheville to think about Jordan, about Luke, about how my grandson had turned into a ghost since he lost his wife. Grace's heart tightened. He never talks about it, because it hurts too much. Albert sighed. Sarah was wonderful. When she was gone, Jordan shut down, stopped smiling, stopped living. He only existed to work and take care of Luke. But he wasn't really present. Not for his son, not for himself. Grace felt her eyes burn. And Luke? Luke was worse. He was 5 when he lost his mother. He stopped talking for months. When he started talking again, he was never the same. Albert looked at her. Until you showed up. I didn't do anything. You did everything. Albert's voice became softer. You made my great-grandson laugh for real for the first time in 2 years. You made my grandson smile like I hadn't seen since before the funeral. You brought life back to that house. Grace couldn't hold back. Tears rolled down her face. I don't know how. By being you, that's all. Albert stood up and with difficulty knelt in front of her. Grace, you talk to objects. I talk to my prostate every morning. We're even. Grace laughed through her tears. That's disgusting. That's life. At 83, you talk to whatever's available. He held her hand. I didn't bring you close to Jordan by accident. That night when you saved me, I saw something in you that I don't see in almost anyone. What? True kindness. No hidden agenda. No calculation. He squeezed her hand. You helped me without knowing who I was, without expecting anything in return. That's rare, Grace. Rarer than all the money in the world. Grace couldn't respond. Victoria can spread all the rumors she wants. Empty people always try to destroy what they can't understand. Albert stood up slowly. But you can't let fear win. Not for me. For you. What if Jordan is mad at me? For pulling away? He's not mad. He's sad. He's confused. He's wondering what he did wrong. Albert walked to the door. But you'll have to work that out with him. I've done my part. Mr. Albert? He turned around. Thank you. Grace wiped away her tears. For telling me all this. Thank you. For saving a stubborn old man on a snowy night. He smiled. And Grace? Yes? Jordan's in the car, waiting. Her heart raced. What? I said I came alone. I lied. Albert opened the door. He wanted to come. He's nervous? I think you two match in that regard. Grace stood up so fast she almost fell. He's here? Now? And you had this whole conversation with me without telling me? I needed to make sure you were ready. Albert winked. Now go. And this time, don't run away. Grace walked past him, her heart beating so loud she could hear it. Martha intercepted her on the way. What's going on? I don't know. Everything. Nothing. My life is chaos. That's not news. Why are you crying and smiling at the same time? Grace didn't answer. She just walked through the diner and pushed the door. Outside, leaning against the limousine, Jordan was waiting, and when his eyes met hers, Grace knew there was no running away anymore. She didn't want to. Jordan was leaning against the limousine, as if the world wasn't falling apart around them. Grace stopped at the diner door, her heart beating so loud she was sure he could hear it. Hi, she said. The most inadequate word in human history. Hi. Jordan stepped away from the car. Can we talk? Here? At your apartment, if you'll let me. Grace looked back. Martha was pressed against the diner window, pretending to clean the glass while watching everything with the subtlety of an elephant in a china shop. Okay, let's go. The trip to the apartment was silent. Grace in the back seat of the limousine, Jordan beside her, and Gerald driving as if he wasn't witnessing the most tense moment in Baxter history. When they arrived at the blue building on Oak Street, Grace realized a problem. I can't take you upstairs. Why not? Because my apartment looks like it was hit by a hurricane, and I'm wearing my diner uniform. And I probably smell like coffee and frying grease. Grace. And I don't have anything to offer. Like, I have tap water and cookies that expired last week, maybe. Grace. And the neighbor next door is extremely nosy. If she sees you going into my apartment, tomorrow the whole building will know that. Grace. Jordan held her hand. I don't care about any of that. She finally looked at him. Okay, but I warned you. Apartment 4B was exactly as Grace had described. Organized chaos. Clothes on the chair, books piled on the floor, a coffee mug abandoned on the coffee table long enough to create its own life form. Sorry about the mess. Grace kicked a pair of socks under the sofa. I wasn't expecting visitors. I came without warning. Technically, your grandfather warned me, but he didn't mention you were coming along, which was crucial information he strategically omitted. Jordan looked around, at the walls with old photos, at the shelf full of secondhand books, at the window with a view of absolutely nothing interesting. I like it here, he said. It feels like you. Chaotic and slightly hopeless, cozy and real. Grace didn't know what to say, so she did what she always did, changed the subject. Want water? I have water. From the tap. That's what I have. I didn't come for the water. I know. She crossed her arms. You came to confront me. About running away. About the ignored phone calls. About me hiding in the kitchen when you showed up at the diner. Martha ratted you out? Martha can't keep a secret even if her life depended on it. Jordan took a step forward. Why did you run away? I didn't run away. I stepped back. It's the same thing. Everyone keeps saying that, but I disagree semantically. Grace. His voice became softer. Please. Tell me the truth. She looked away. At the window, at the floor, anywhere but his face. I heard the rumors about me being an opportunist, a fortune hunter. The words came out bitter. And I thought, if I stepped back, you wouldn't be hurt. Your reputation, your work, your family. You thought you were protecting me. I was protecting you. From what? From being happy? Jordan moved closer. Grace, I've spent the last 10 days miserable. Luke asks about you every night. My grandfather looks at me like I'm completely incompetent, and I can't sleep because I keep thinking about what I did wrong. You didn't do anything wrong. Then why did you leave? Grace felt her eyes burn. Because I'm scared, Jordan. The truth finally came out. Scared of believing this is real, and then losing everything. Scared of getting used to you and Luke, and then you both realizing I'm not enough. Grace, you know what Victoria said? That makeshift waitresses don't last in this world. She wiped away a tear that insisted on falling. What if she's right? What if I'm just a passing novelty? A nice story you'll tell later. Remember that funny waitress who talked to objects? The silence that followed was heavy. Then Jordan did something she didn't expect. He laughed. What? Grace was offended. I'm opening my heart here and you're laughing? I'm laughing because you're the smartest and most absurd person I've ever met. He held her face between his hands. Grace, you're not a passing story. You're the chapter I want to read for the rest of my life. That was really cheesy. I know, but it's true. Grace couldn't speak. I was scared too, Jordan continued. Scared of falling in love again. Scared of losing someone again. Scared of letting Luke get attached and then have his heart broken. He pressed his forehead against hers. But I don't want to live in fear anymore. Not when the alternative is you. Jordan, do you remember what I told you in the park? That you're not second choice? I remember. I meant every word. You're the first person I choose. Really, without hesitation. And I'll keep choosing you. Every day, until you believe it. Grace felt her heart explode. I'm in my diner uniform, she whispered. And I think there's mustard in my hair. If you came to win me over, I'm not at my best visual moment. Jordan looked at her hair. There really was a suspicious stain. I think it's adorable. You're lying. I'm completely in love with you. It's different. And then he kissed her. It wasn't like the first kiss at the gazebo. That one had been gentle, hesitant, full of questions. This was an answer. When they separated, Grace was breathless. Stay, she said. The word came out before she could stop it. Please, stay. Jordan smiled. I wasn't going anywhere. They spent the afternoon on Grace's old couch, talking about everything and nothing, about fears and dreams, about the past and the future, about yoga pandas and coffee machines with names. When the sun began to set, Jordan looked at her. I need to tell you something. What? I have a plan. For us. Grace frowned. What kind of plan? Jordan smiled. That smile that said he was plotting something. You'll find out. Soon. And from the way he said it, Grace knew her life was about to change. Again. 3 weeks. 21 days. 504 hours of happiness that Grace had finally stopped counting. She was learning to believe that good things could last. Then Jordan called with a strange request. I need you to go to the diner tonight, at 8. Grace frowned. I'm off today. Martha will kill me if I show up on my day off. Trust me. You always say that before putting me in embarrassing situations, and you always survive. Surviving isn't the same as enjoying, Jordan, he laughed on the other end of the line. At 8, wear something nice. Something nice? Why? What are you plotting? Bye, Grace. The call ended before she could protest. Grace looked at her phone. This isn't suspicious at all, she told the device. Not suspicious. 0. Completely normal. The phone didn't respond. You don't know anything either, do you? At 7:55, Grace was standing in front of the Blue Ridge Diner, wearing the only presentable dress she had, a green dress she had bought on sale 3 years ago and worn exactly twice. The diner was different. The lights were off, but there was a glow coming from inside. A golden glow. Warm. Okay, she murmured to the door. I don't know what's happening in there, but I need you to let me in without tripping. Can we do that? The door didn't answer, but when Grace pushed it, it opened smoothly, and Grace completely lost the ability to speak. The diner was unrecognizable. Fairy lights hanging everywhere, flowers on every table, white roses, her favorites. Floating candles that created a magical glow, and in the center of it all, the people she loved. Albert, sitting at his usual table with a smile that took up his entire face. Luke, practically jumping with excitement, holding something in his hands. Margaret, the mansion's cook, quietly wiping away tears. Martha, who clearly knew everything and had lied about being mad about appearances on her day off. Gerald, the driver, standing in the corner like an elegant bodyguard. And Jordan. Jordan was in the middle of the room, wearing a dark suit, looking nervous for the first time since Grace had known him. What? Grace couldn't finish the sentence. Surprise! Luke shouted, abandoning any attempt at discretion. Luke! Jordan sighed. We rehearsed. You were going to stay quiet until the right time. Sorry, I'm terrible at secrets. You know that. Albert chuckled. He takes after me. Grace was still standing in the doorway, trying to process everything. Jordan, what's happening? He walked over to her, took her hand. Come with me. He guided her to the center of the diner, the same place where she had served coffee to hundreds of customers, where she had argued with the coffee machine, where she had found an old man freezing on a snowy night. Grace. Jordan held both her hands. I have a prepared speech. I rehearsed it 15 times. Luke made me time it. 17 times, Luke corrected. He messed up twice. Thanks for the precision, son. Grace laughed, her eyes already starting to sting. A few weeks ago, Jordan continued, my grandfather showed up at the door of this diner, nearly frozen, and a waitress he'd never seen before in his life pulled him inside. She fought with the heater, threatened the coffee machine, and saved his life without knowing who he was or expecting anything in return. Grace looked at Albert. He was crying and smiling at the same time. That night, my grandfather made a decision. He decided that this waitress needed to meet his grandson, a guy who had forgotten how to smile, who was raising his son alone, who thought he'd never be truly happy again. Jordan squeezed her hands. He was right. You changed everything, Grace. You made Luke laugh again, made my grandfather hope again, made me believe again. Jordan, her voice came out choked. You talk to objects. You trip over things that don't exist. You apologized to sugar bowls and named coffee machines. He smiled, and I fell in love with every strange and wonderful part of you. Grace felt tears running down her face. I don't want to live without you anymore. Jordan let go of her hands and stepped back. Luke? The boy ran over to them, holding a blue velvet box like it was the most precious treasure in the world. I practiced, Luke said proudly. I walked slowly and everything. You did great, son. Jordan took the bodies, and then, slowly, he knelt down. Grace forgot how to breathe. Grace Turner? He opened the box, revealing a delicate ring with a diamond that sparkled in the candlelight. Will you turn our chaos into family? Will you be my wife? The silence in the diner was absolute. Grace looked at the ring, then at Jordan, then at the ring again. "Hey, ring," she whispered, her voice trembling. "If you slip off my hand, I'm suing you. You hear? Lawsuit. No mercy." Martha stifled a laugh. Luke frowned. "She's talking to the ring?" "She talks to everything," Albert explained. "It's her charm." "But did she say yes?" Luke looked at his father, worried. "She said yes to the ring, and to Dad too, right?" Grace laughed through her tears. That laugh that was half cry, half joy, completely mixed up. "Yes," she looked at Jordan. "Yes, 1,000 times yes, 1,000,000 times yes. All the yeses in the universe." Jordan got up so fast he almost tripped. He put the ring on her finger, carefully, as if he were holding something too precious to exist. And then he kissed her. The diner exploded in applause. Luke did a little celebration dance. Albert cried openly. Martha shouted finally, as if she'd been waiting for this her whole life. Margaret and Gerald clapped discreetly. When they separated, Grace looked around, at the lights, at the flowers, at the people she loved. "You did all this for me?" "I would do so much more." Jordan pressed his forehead against hers. "You deserve the world, Grace. I just want to spend the rest of my life trying to give it to you." That was really cheesy again. "I know, but you'll have to get used to it. I'm cheesy when I'm in love." Luke appeared beside them, tugging at Grace's dress sleeve. "Does this mean you're going to live with us now?" Grace looked at Jordan, then at Luke. "It does. And will you make breakfast?" "I make burnt toast and coffee that's too strong. Will that work?" "Perfect." Luke hugged her. "I like burnt toast." "Nobody likes burnt toast, Luke." "I do when you make it." Grace felt her heart overflow. Albert approached, his eyes still wet. "I knew," he said simply. "From that first night, I knew you were special." "I just made coffee." "You did much more than that." He held her hand. "You saved my life, and then you saved my grandson's life and my great-grandson's." He smiled. "Welcome to the family, Grace." She hugged him without being able to speak. When she stepped back, she looked at the diner. Her diner, the place where it all began, now transformed into something magical. "Hey, Cremilda," she whispered toward the coffee machine. "Did you see that? I'm getting married." The machine didn't respond, but Grace was certain that if it could, it would be smiling. Because on that snowy night, when Grace pulled an unknown elderly man into a closed diner, she wasn't just saving a life, she was beginning her own story. A story of strong coffee, chatty objects, and a love that neither of them expected to find. And as Jordan held her, Luke danced around them, and Albert watched with pride, Grace finally understood. She didn't need to be anyone's plan B anymore. Because, for the first time in her life, someone had chosen her first, and she had finally allowed herself to be chosen. The end. What did you think of Grandfather Albert being the Cupid for this couple? Has something similar ever happened to you? Has someone in your family or a friend ever given you that little push that changed your love life? On a scale of 0 to 10, what score would you give this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to receive more touching stories like this one. See you next time.